I'm Gary Anthony Ramsay with your Hour News Now Rewind. Stories making headlines for the week ending March 26, 2011. Our top stories include: Barack Obama takes heat from Washington lawmakers over his decision to use military force in Libya. 2 New York welfare workers are charged in the death of a 4-year-old girl. A 4-year-old Baltimore boy is dead after he finds a loaded gun he thought was a toy. Barry Bonds admits to using steroids, but then blames his trainer. Chris Brown trashes an ABC News dressing room, then apologizes. And a queen of Egypt and a friend of the king of pop passes away. Our top story: Washington lawmakers, and not just Republicans, are criticizing the president for his decision to join a multinational bombing campaign in Libya. The actions come less than a week after the United Nations voted to enforce a no-fly zone over Libyan skies, as it appeared that forces loyal to Muammar Gaddafi were gaining the advantage in what has become a civil war. The president was on his South American diplomatic swing when House Speaker John Boehner released an open letter to Barack Obama, pressing him on the issues of cost, leadership, and exit strategy. The move breaks an unwritten rule not to criticize a sitting president while he's on foreign soil. And while not objecting to the mission of protecting citizens, Boehner also expressed concerns over the lack of consultation with congressional leaders before shots or missiles were fired. The White House defends its actions as a humanitarian mission. Control of the no-fly zone was turned over from U.S. forces to NATO this week. In New York, 2 welfare workers and a grandmother are charged with felonies related to the death of a 4-year-old girl last fall. It's the first time that New York City social service employees have been criminally indicted in such a case. Former caseworker Damon Adams on the left and his supervisor Cherise Bell, seen in the middle, were indicted of charges of criminally negligent homicide, official misconduct, and endangering the welfare of a child. The charges stem from the death of 4-year-old Marcella Pierce, who police say was tied to a bed, beaten, malnourished, and drugged before she died last fall. This all happened allegedly at the hands of her own mother. The child's grandmother, who prosecutors say watched the child's ordeal and did nothing, was charged with manslaughter and other crimes. Prosecutors say Adams filed reports claiming he had seen the child and that she was in good health even after her death. His supervisor is accused of altering records to cover it up. In Baltimore, police are investigating the death of a 4-year-old boy who died after shooting himself with a gun he found in an apartment. Police say they believe Tyshawn Townsend thought the weapon was a toy that he found in a box. The child died after a single shot in the face. At the time, police were not sure if the child and his mother lived in the home where the gun was found, or they were just visiting. Also unclear if the gun was legally registered or involved in crimes. No charges have been filed yet in this case. The census reports that more blacks in America are leaving the big city life for the suburbs. New York, Detroit, and Chicago have seen the greatest migration. The percentage of the nation's black population living in the South has hit its highest point in half a century. That's according to U.S. Census data, but also reports that younger and more educated black residents are moving out of declining cities in the Northeast and Midwest in search of better opportunities. Detroit, Chicago, and New York saw the biggest declines. About 17% of blacks who moved to the South in the past decade left New York State, far more than any other state, according to the census report. And Atlanta is now the city with the second largest African American population, surpassing Chicago. Right now, 57% of America's blacks live in the South, the highest percentage since 1960. In your Hour News Now World Wrap, the people of Haiti have finally elected a president. But with the counting still underway, millions are still not sure who that leader is. The runoff election between former First Lady Merlande Manigat and entertainer Mickey Martelly went off smoothly according to international observers, but preliminary results won't be released until March 31st, with final results not coming until April 16th. The announcement will end a 7-month political ordeal that started with as many as 18 candidates, including R&B singer Wyclef Jean. Jean, who was supporting Mickey Martelly, claims that he was shot on Election Day, but police in Haiti say he was only cut on his hand during a car accident. Haiti is still recovering from a devastating earthquake that killed more than 300,000 people and has left more than 1 million people still homeless there. In Uganda, a human rights group says that the police force there is secretly running a death and torture squad that allegedly continues to terrorize its citizens. Human Rights Watch says that officers from the Rapid Response Unit regularly beat people with objects including batons, glass bottles, and metal pipes, according to a 59-page report. The report also said in some cases, the police inserted pins under detainees' fingernails. A Ugandan police spokeswoman said there had been cases of torture, but their number had been reduced. The report was based on the testimony of more than 100 interviews with former detainees, their families, and current and former members of the police unit. In Toronto, the black community there is mourning the passing of one of their own advocates against police brutality. Dudley Laws died this week after battling cancer and kidney disease. In 1988, after black men were shot and killed during confrontations with Canadian police, Laws co-founded the Black Action Defense Committee. He also pushed for an independent committee to investigate police shootings after another controversial shooting death in 1990.
If the people do not have confidence in the police, it doesn't matter if you put another 1,000 police officers out there, they will not get involved within the process.
Laws, an immigration consultant by trade, was born in Jamaica and came to Canada after living for a time in England. He was 76. That's your World Wrap. In sports, the Barry Bonds perjury trial gets underway and starts with a bombshell. The home run king admits that he used steroids, but then says he did so by accident. Bonds' lawyer told jurors the former baseball player did use performance-enhancing chemicals during his run to capture the home run title, but then blamed former trainer Greg Anderson. Anderson's secretly taped conversations were part of the government's case against Bonds, who was charged with 4 counts of lying to a grand jury in 2003 when he said he never knowingly used steroids. Also faces 1 count of obstruction of justice. The former NFL great Lawrence Taylor has a new record, a police record, now that the former New York Giant is also a registered sex offender. Taylor pleaded guilty in January to sexual misconduct and having sex with an underage prostitute. He must now serve 6 years of probation, part of the deal that allowed him to plead guilty to misdemeanor charges. The underage girl, who was 16 at the time of the incident, says she believes Taylor should go to jail for what he did.
My life has changed because of him. He took something precious from me.
Well, Taylor will find out what level of sex offender he'll have to bear when he goes back to a New York courtroom in April. Well, Chris Brown was once again back in the headlines. This time, he trashes an ABC News dressing room. Apparently, he's still very upset about questions regarding his assault on his former girlfriend, Rihanna. Brown was in Good Morning America to talk about his new album, FAME, when anchor Robin Roberts asked him about the assault almost 2 years ago.
Well, that was very serious, what you went through and what happened, and even the judge, though, afterwards said that you had served your time as far as the community service and that, and moving on. But have you been able to? How have you been able to?
I've been focusing on this album. You know, I think this album is what I want people to hear and want people to really get into. So definitely, this album is what I want them to talk about, and not the stuff that happened 2 years ago.
Brown went on to perform, but later took a chair and began breaking up his dressing room, even cracking a glass that opens out to a street below. Brown later apologized for the tirade, but then went on to blame ABC for bringing up the issue. And finally, she was a white woman who was cast as Hollywood's first blockbuster African queen, but she was also an advocate in the fight against AIDS and a close friend and confidant of the king of pop, Michael Jackson. Elizabeth Taylor died after an ongoing battle with heart and lung issues. Liz Taylor was a close friend and confidant to Michael Jackson up until his death in 2009. Like Jackson, Liz Taylor was a child star who blossomed into an entertainment powerhouse. She was the first woman to receive $1 million when she played Cleopatra in 1963. She won 2 Academy Awards for other movies, Butterfield 8 and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. She received lots of press for her marriages, divorces, her own battle with drug and alcohol addiction, but her role as the Queen of Egypt may be her most enduring. Casting a white woman as an African queen is still debated and practiced in Hollywood today. Elizabeth Taylor, who was buried near Michael Jackson, was 79. For a complete check of any of the stories you've seen on The Rewind, remember, as always, go to the bottom of the webpage, find the link of the story you'd like to see, and click your way through. That's your Our News Now Rewind for this week. I'm Gary Anthony Ramsay.